You know what stings the most? It's not that they forgot your birthday, or that they didn't call on Sunday. It's that you expected them to, and they didn't. You sat by the window, maybe with a cup of tea, replaying moments in your mind. How you held them when they cried, cheered at every school play, worked late so they'd have a better life. And now they're adults, busy, overwhelmed, pulled in 1,000 directions. You tell yourself they're just busy. But the silence still echoes louder than reason. This video isn't here to blame them, and it's definitely not to blame you. It's about understanding that pain and gently peeling it back to find peace underneath. Because when you feel forgotten, sometimes what you really need isn't their call. It's your own voice saying, "I still matter." Let's walk through 5 truths that can bring light to those quiet, heavy days. Truth number 1. They're not rejecting you. They're just surviving. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You see their name online. They posted a photo. They were tagged at brunch, but they haven't called you. And deep down, you wonder, did I do something wrong? Did I matter less once they grew up? Here's the quiet truth nobody says aloud. Most adult children aren't ignoring their parents out of spite. They're not rejecting you. They're just barely holding themselves together. Today's world moves fast. Too fast. Many in their 30s, 40s, 50s are caught in the middle, still raising their kids, chasing job security, worrying about bills, their own health, their marriage, and yes, quietly battling anxiety, depression, or even burnout. They don't always choose to disconnect. Sometimes they're just surviving 1 hour to the next. Imagine them juggling glass balls. Not just work and family, but emotions, fears, expectations. And every time they think, "I should call mom," a toddler screams, an email pings, dinner burns, and the moment is gone. They may scroll through old photos of you, smile at your old voicemails, feel a wave of guilt they don't even know how to name. But guilt isn't the same as not caring. And silence isn't always a sign of distance. Sometimes it's just a symptom of survival. None of this erases your pain. You're allowed to miss them, to ache for their voice, to feel invisible in their world. But when your mind whispers, "They don't care," try replacing it with, "They might be struggling in ways I can't see." That shift, that tiny reframe, doesn't fix everything, but it gives your heart just a bit more peace. And sometimes that's enough to make it through the quiet. Truth number 2. Their distance isn't a reflection of your worth. Let's be honest, when your child drifts away, it doesn't just feel like space, it feels personal. You start replaying memories, trying to pinpoint the moment they stopped needing you. Was I too strict? Too soft? Too available? Too absent? This is what we do as parents. We turn their silence into a mirror, and that mirror often shows us our worst fears. Maybe I wasn't a good enough mother. Maybe I failed in ways I didn't even see. But here's what I've learned from dozens of real conversations with aging parents. Their distance is usually about them, not you. We all go through seasons, and for adult children, that season can look like emotional pulling away. They're trying to define themselves, prove they're independent, untangle old wounds, some real, some imagined. Sometimes they rewrite the story of their childhood with a sharp pen. They blame. They avoid. Not because you were awful, but because they're still trying to make sense of life. It's painful, I know, to be seen not as the person who tucked them in every night, but as the one they say they need space from. But your worth isn't measured by their current perception. Your legacy isn't defined by how often they text. You were there in ways they may not understand until they have children of their own. You showed up in ways they might never be able to name out loud. And just because they're quiet now, doesn't mean your love didn't shape them. So please, don't shrink under the weight of their distance. You are still whole, still worthy, still lovable. Your story is not over. And this chapter, though lonelier than you hoped, is not your fault. Truth number 3. You're allowed to grieve the relationship you hoped for. There's a quiet sorrow many parents carry, not because something tragic happened, but because something beautiful didn't. You imagined adult life would bring you closer. You thought there'd be spontaneous visits, long heart-to-hearts, Sunday dinners where the table is full, and your presence still matters. Instead, you get texts without warmth, quick check-ins that feel more like obligation than love. Birthdays remembered late, plans canceled, promises postponed. And while everyone says, that's just how life is, kids get busy, that doesn't erase the ache. You're grieving something real. Not a death, not a disaster, but the slow fading of a bond that once lit up your world. Let me tell you, it's okay to grieve what you didn't get. The hugs you hoped for, the closeness you imagined, the feeling of still being central to someone's life. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet resignation in the way you put your phone back down, in the silence after a birthday call that never came. But grief doesn't mean weakness. It means you loved deeply. It means you had hope. It means you're human. Give yourself permission to name that pain, and not apologize for it, because healing begins the moment we stop pretending we're fine, and start honoring the depth of what we feel. Truth number 4. Peace comes when you stop begging to be chosen. There's a moment, quiet but powerful, when you stop chasing. You stop checking your phone every hour, hoping for a message. You stop bending over backwards to prove you're still needed. You stop rehearsing the perfect sentence to make them call more, visit more, care more. That moment, it isn't bitterness, it's peace, because there's a kind of freedom in no longer begging to be chosen, in realizing you don't have to earn the love you already gave freely. Over decades in bedtime stories, packed lunches, and unconditional presence. Yes, they're your children. Yes, you love them more than anything. But your life does not need to revolve around their availability. You are not a waiting room. You are a full and layered soul, deserving of joy, purpose, and connection, even if it comes from elsewhere. This doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means you start loving yourself enough to fill your days with more than longing. And sometimes, when you stop chasing, they notice. When the calls aren't being begged for. When your voice is steady, not pleading. When your world doesn't pause for their attention. They begin to wonder what changed. You don't need to disappear, but you also don't need to disappear into them. Choose yourself. Peace isn't found in being chosen. It's found in no longer needing to be. Truth number 5. Love doesn't always look the way you hoped, but it's still there. Here's the strange thing about love as we age. It often changes its shape, but not its depth. Maybe your kids don't call every week. Maybe they rush through conversations. Maybe they don't say, "I love you," the way they used to. And part of you wonders, do they even care anymore? But sometimes love looks like fixing your porch light when they visit, or forwarding an article about your health, or quietly paying the bill at lunch. It's not always tender words and long hugs. Sometimes it's logistical, awkward, clumsy, especially for adult children trying to juggle work, their own kids, a mortgage, and 1,000 invisible pressures. You may not be at the center of their world anymore, but you're still part of it. And while that shift can hurt, it can also be freeing. Because once you let go of how love should look, you begin to notice how it quietly shows up anyway, in different words, in smaller moments, in gestures that say, "I still care, even if I don't say it the way you wish I did." It's not perfect. It's not what you once had. But it's still love. And sometimes, softening your expectations lets you feel the love that's been there all along, just wearing a different coat. A gentle task for the week. If this video stirred something in you, don't just sit with the ache. Let it guide you to something softer. Here's a small task, just for you. Write one letter, not to your kids, not to anyone else, to yourself, to the version of you who waited by the phone, who wondered, did I do enough? who quietly hurts when the silence stretches too long. Tell them what they need to hear, that they were a good parent, that their worth isn't measured by how often they're called, that they're still here, strong, wise, and worthy of joy. Seal it, read it when you need reminding, and if you're ready, plan one thing this week that brings you peace. A walk, a lunch, a call to an old friend. Not because someone else showed up, but because you did. Growing older doesn't mean growing invisible. Your feelings matter. Your story matters. And even if your kids are busy, you still deserve a full, rich, beautiful life. So if this video made you feel seen, leave a comment below. Not just for me, but for someone else who's reading and needs to know they're not alone. What helped you find peace when you felt forgotten? And if you haven't yet, tap subscribe. Because around here, we talk about the things no one else does, with honesty, humor, and heart. Until next time, take care of yourself the way you once took care of everyone else. You've earned it.